Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Captain Frank Hawks, and hopefully my mic is on. Today, we are going to be restarting, well, specifically, restarting a video series on the subject matter of fixing broken tabletop role-playing games. Before that, how was your Christmas? Mine was pretty good. I got to revisit a part of my childhood. This was a gift to me by my wife, and I'm very pleased to have it. I am a Ghostbusters fan. Um, got a got a pretty decent haul this year, but we're not going to talk about that. We are going to restart the series on how to fix tabletop role-playing games. Primarily because I came across a tabletop role-playing game that is also subject to part of my childhood. This is not the video on this subject matter. We will cover that in the next video, but this is the game in question. So, here's the deal. The deal is, I don't generally think ahead. I don't. I get an idea in my head and I rush to get it done on the computer as fast as I possibly can. I don't generally think ahead or script things out, which I need to start learning how to do. So, step 1. Why in God's name would we ever fix a tabletop role-playing game? And there are a lot of purists out there who would give me shit for trying to do so. Well, here it is. Here's the deal. The deal is that, well, there are a lot of really great games out there, and those really great games sometimes have mechanics that don't exactly make sense for the game. Essentially speaking, the reason why we would fix a game in the first place is because as tabletop role players and gamers and game masters and dungeon masters and referees, and in this particular instance, ghost masters, we have a right. And that right is the golden rule. If a mechanic or a rule, for instance, let's say brownie points, as far as that game's concerned, if some part of the game either bogs down, slows down, interrupts, or just flat out does not make sense, or for any reason that you could pry from your sweet ass comes to mind, that for some reason this needs fixing, we have the right to either omit or completely rewrite said rule. And this rule is called the golden rule. The golden rule states that if there is a rule for any reason that we find is non-functional or needs work, we have the right to wholly and entirely rewrite it or omit it altogether. And that's for any tabletop role-playing game, period. The golden rule comes from a time which I would refer to as the golden age of tabletop role-playing, which was the 90s as far as I was concerned. During this time, there were, it seemed like, a tabletop role-playing game for everything. And most of those tabletop role-playing games came out of the late 80s to early 90s. And there were a lot of us who were like, wow, we could do anything. We could play anything, we could go anywhere, we could do anything. But there was always a rule. one rule that didn't make any sense for being there, and something I personally experienced with the game master that I had growing up, my best friend Brandon from high school, is he he explained it to me. We were in the middle of playing, and there was a rule that we all kept encountering, that as a group we would cumulatively go, ugh, the second it would come up. It was a groan moment. And he got to a point, we got to a point where it was going to make us want to stop playing the game. And I don't even remember what the game was or what the specific rule was, because it's literally been over 20 years and I've moved on to other things. But he literally said, you know what? Skip it. And of course, questions arise, and he said, golden rule. Golden rule. It is not something that I believe can be fixed. I will try to fix it later, but here's the deal. It does not work for right now, and so for right now we're going to skip it. If I can fix it, I will. If I can't, we will omit it. And that's that. So, in an attempt to fix my rushing and my babbling, we're going to script things. So here's how it is. We have to create a checklist. The checklist has to be simple, it has to be straightforward, and it has to be cut and dry. Here's the deal. What is the core of a game? What is the point behind the game? Why are we interested in it? What drives our interest? And what about it is the heart of the game? For instance, the heart of this particular game is pertinent to a subculture. Okay, that subculture would be those people who are interested in being Ghostbusters, of which there seems to be a considerable number of. So, to be a Ghostbuster, to have a Ghostbuster franchise, and to operate it, and to go forth and bust ghosts, and solve ghostly-oriented problems, or supernatural problems with a proton pack. There we go. What about this game works? That's the next part of the checklist. What about this game works, and how can we make sure that we do not lose that part that works? What about this game doesn't work? What needs fixing, and how do we fix it? Okay? That's the next question. How can we fix the game? How can we fix the part that is broken? Will fixing the part that is broken break the game? Okay? And I feel that as a person who writes tabletop role-playing games for fun, just fun, I've never published anything. It's only for me and my friends to sit around a table and have fun. What about fixing things could break it? And that's getting into a deeper level of mechanics. The simple fact of the matter is fixing something is not always the answer. Sometimes the answer is to live with it. You know, you've got to live with the problem, because without living with the problem, the game doesn't work, and omitting it won't work, and fixing it won't work. It's just the way it is. And that's the facts, Jack. You know, you can't omit attributes. You can't omit skills and abilities and talents and spells and things like that. You can't omit those things. You just have to learn to live with it. So if the attributes don't work, it's not like you can omit it, and there are some instances in which you can rewrite. But there are some instances in which that is the way it is. Like, you couldn't rewrite the attributes of Dungeons and Dragons. That's the way it's been for so long. It would cease to be Dungeons and Dragons, at least in one aspect, if you did so. I mean, you might be able to add an attribute, maybe, but you would have to completely rebalance the entire system around that attribute. It would be like, here's this perfectly balanced seesaw, or weight measure, and the second you add weight to one side, it starts to cant, and the whole game is offset from that point. As much as I have a love-hate relationship with Dungeons and Dragons is a game where the mechanics are put together just so, and they work. There's no need to rewrite. You might need to rewrite a small part of it, like a race or a class, or I have a very itchy nose, or a spell or something that just needs a little bit more rework. It's not a complete failing as it is. It just needs a little bit more fleshing out, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes we develop something and it just needs fleshing out. I have stopped in the middle of a game to flesh out with players, which is my tool to flesh out games. That's just what I've always done. And most players are pleased to be able to put their 2 cents in. Anyways, like for instance, there was a time in my life whenever I saw ninja as better than samurai. They had a lot more they had to do. They're not better, they're equal and different. And seeing it in that light helped me to rewrite it in such a way as that it works. So, and I and a buddy, we had to sit over like a weekend to get that done. Anyways, so in the next episode, and mind you, the next episode to the series will not come until I have finished reading this. Okay? Because most of the rules, unfortunately, are bogged down in something. If I can find the title page. Oh, this is introduction. There we go. And something called 30th and Lexington. There are entire swaths of rules that don't exist outside of this thus far. And that's a problem. Excuse me. One that we will go over when we get there. Now, mind you, I'm probably going to add to this checklist because there's a whole bunch of different techniques and methodologies and philosophies behind how to fix a broken game. There's a lot about this game that is not broken because it is streamlined. There's a lot about this game that is not broken because of its complexity, so on and so forth. And we will get into it from game to game. In order for me to get back to the Shadowrun game, I would literally have to sit down and read through all of the rules and tell you why it's broken. You see, and in order to do that, I would have to find a copy of Shadowrun 3rd edition, which I would consider to be the last edition of Shadowrun, to be able to explain it to you. Beyond that, have fun, be safe, take care of each other. I hope you had a great Christmas, and we will talk later. This is Captain Frank Hawks, and I'm signing out.